Hello and welcome to another edition of Pack Mentality here on ArizonaSports.com. My name is Vince Marotta. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving weekend. The regular season is over for all intents and purposes, and here's what we learned in Week 13 of the Pac-12. We learned that U of A quarterback Matt Scott wasn't quite the same after the highly publicized "he's puking, but it's not a concussion" incident against USC. In the 3 games he played following, Scott threw for just 514 yards with 4 touchdowns and 3 picks. Arizona went 1-2 in those games, and Scott's 4 turnovers had a lot to do with the Wildcats' loss to ASU in the Territorial Cup game last Friday. We learned that Washington is one of the most confusing teams in the country. They beat Stanford and Oregon State during the regular season, and despite going into the Apple Cup game on a 4-game winning streak, lost to a wretched Washington State team in overtime. The Huskies were up 18 points entering the fourth quarter and let it slip away. Now, I gave the Cougars no shot on last week's edition of Pack Mentality, so here, publicly, I'll admit I was wrong and say kudos to you, Wazoo. We learned that 1-11 isn't good enough to keep your job. Jon Embree was fired by Colorado after just 2 seasons in the head coaching position. The Buffs wrapped up the worst season in CU's football history with a 42-35 loss to Utah on Friday. Embree was let go Sunday, had a press conference Monday to say goodbye, during which he suggested he got a raw deal after getting only 2 seasons to try to turn around a Colorado program that had 5 straight losing campaigns under previous coach Dan Hawkins. That seemed to be a point of contention with Embree. Hawkins got more time, but under Embree, Colorado was an embarrassment on the football field, going 4-21 and losing 15 of 18 conference games by an average score of 32 points. CU's players did perform well in the classroom, but the harsh reality is if your football team doesn't perform on Saturdays, you get the axe. Just ask Gene Chizik, who got fired at Auburn just 2 years after winning a national championship. We learned that Oregon's offense is just fine, thank you very much. A week after getting shut down by Stanford, the Ducks rolled up 570 yards and 48 points on Oregon State's solid defense. Chip Kelly's team won't play for a national championship, but will wrap up a BCS bowl bid. And we learned that Stanford should be the overwhelming favorite to win the Pac-12 title after dismantling UCLA in Pasadena in a championship game preview. The Cardinal held the Bruins to a season-low 334 yards of offense in an impressive 35-17 win. Sure, UCLA didn't have really that much to play for. In fact, LA Times columnist TJ Simers suggested to UCLA head coach Jim Mora that they threw the game as not to show too much for the rematch. Check this out.
So, first quarter, 7-7, and then you go in your NFL mode and play a preseason game, figuring that you'll get them next week?
No.
No?
No.
Why not, though?
Well, because we're competitors, TJ, and those guys in there don't spend all the time that they spend preparing for a game in the off season, during the week, the sacrifices they make to go out and not try their best to win every opportunity they get. So that's what they did. They tried their best to win, and we came up a little short.
Wouldn't you rather play Stanford than Oregon?
No, it didn't matter. We wanted to win this game today. That's our objective, was to win the game today, and we didn't do it. We came up short. But to insinuate that our players didn't give their best effort would not be
I'm insinuating you can arrange how the game is played. That's what I'm insinuating.
I've never in my life stepped on the field to compete and not given my best, nor will I ever.
You did that in preseason games in the NFL all the time, so
those games didn't count.
Yeah, well, you know how to play a game so that you don't have to reveal things, and don't look around for help. I'm over here. You don't have to.
Well, you're making a statement. I don't know if is there a question in there somewhere.
What's wrong with the statement? You can comment on the statement.
I'll comment on a question.
Simers is known for pushing buttons, and Mora handled himself well. We'll see how that serves him this week in Palo Alto with a Rose Bowl berth on the line. Last week I went 4-2 on the picks to bring the season record to 67-22, but I'll admit I almost never get the Territorial Cup pick right, and between you and me, I'm glad I was wrong this year. This week in the BCS rankings, you've got 4 teams in the top 25. Oregon stays at 5th. Stanford remains 8th. Oregon State still number 15, and UCLA moves up a spot to 16th. Arizona and Washington both fell out of the top 25. This week, we've got 2 games on the schedule. Yes, Oregon State hosting Nicholls State in a game that was supposed to take place in September, but Hurricane Isaac prevented the Colonels from getting to Oregon. In fact, OSU considered canceling the game altogether because they thought a matchup against a bad FCS team would hurt their strength of schedule. But with the BCS out of the picture for the Beavers, it's game on, and that's bad news for Nicholls State. Oregon State will play a lot of reserves, and they will still roll 51-10. And that brings us to the big one, the Pac12 Championship game Friday at Stanford Stadium. The Cardinal hosting the UCLA Bruins. Again, Stanford just beat the Bruins last week, so everything's fresh. The Cardinal defense did a great job of bottling up UCLA's Jonathan Franklin, holding him to just 65 yards and 3.1 yards per carry. He's the key to the offense, but I don't see anything changing this week on the farm, where Stanford has won 19 of its past 20 games. It will be David Shaw and the Cardinal representing the Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl New Year's Day after a 31-20 win over the Bruins. There you go, another edition of Pac Mentality in the books. We'll have one more episode of the show December 11th, a look ahead to the bowl games and a recap of the season. For more insights and observations on the Pac-12 and whatever random thoughts pop into my head, you can follow me on Twitter at Vince Marotta. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Pac Mentality right here on ArizonaSports.com.